Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving headfirst into demystifying one of the most rigorous and unforgiving standards in the entire medical technology world, IEC 62304. Specifically, we're looking at the Effective Edition. That's 2006 plus Amendment 1 from 2015. So if you're building software as a medical device or sticking software inside one, this is literally your rulebook. It governs your entire lifecycle. Today, we're going to break down the strict rules of software safety classification and uncover the hard truths about what it actually takes to prove your software is safe.
Okay, let's kick things off with a premise that is honestly kind of terrifying, but absolutely foundational. Ready? Software does not wear out. It fails because of a fault someone put there. Think about that for a second. Every single software failure is therefore a systematic failure. The bug didn't just happen randomly. It was always sitting there, quietly waiting for the exact right input to trigger it.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to stop thinking about the physical world. Hardware fails randomly, right? Wear, tear, corrosion. It actually has a measurable failure rate, which means redundancy genuinely helps. If a physical pump breaks, a backup pump takes over. Simple. But software? Totally different ballgame. The failure is systematic because a human wrote that flaw into the code. If you run two identical copies of flawed code side by side, they're going to fail in the exact same way. There's zero meaningful failure rate you can calculate here. And because you cannot manage software risk with probability, you absolutely must manage it with process.
So how do we navigate that process? Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the scope and the 5 processes, then explore the 3 safety classes. After that, we hit the hardest pill to swallow, the zero probability rule, followed by systems, items, and segregation. Finally, we'll wrap up by looking at tailoring the work and the honest route for legacy software. Let's get to it.
Section 1, Scope and the 5 Processes. Setting the baseline. IEC 62304 basically dictates everything that needs to be planned, executed, and evidenced. It governs the lifecycle process of the software, not your finished product validation and not your overall quality management system. The standard requires 5 core processes: development, maintenance, risk management, configuration management, and problem resolution. Now here is the real punchline, the big takeaway you need to remember. Development is literally the only process on this list that actually ends. It spits out the first release and it's done. But those other 4, they're going to outlive your initial project team and just keep running forever, basically until the product is entirely pulled off the market. You've got to plan for that reality from day 1.
Section 2, the 3 safety classes, sizing the impact.
Before you even think about planning your dev work, you have to figure out the software system's potential impact on a patient. This sets the stage for everything else. And the mapping for this severity is surprisingly simple. We just ask one question: what could a hazardous situation involving this software lead to? If no injury or damage to health is possible, boom, it's Class A. If an injury is possible but it's not serious, you're at Class B. And if death or serious injury is on the table, that's Class C. Notice what we are not asking here. We aren't asking how likely the injury is or how brilliant your coding team is. It relies 100% purely on the severity of the harm.
Section 3. The zero probability rule. Assuming the worst.
This brings us to what is easily the most unforgiving but honestly highly logical rule in the whole standard. You must assume the software fails. You have to treat the probability of that failure as literally 100%. You cannot use test coverage, you cannot use historic defect density, and you definitely can't point to an absence of field complaints to argue that a bug just won't happen. Like we established earlier, software faults are systematic. If the fault is in there, it's going to fail every single time that trigger hits. Arguing, oh, that would almost never happen, is exactly the argument this standard completely forbids.
So if probability is completely off the table, what can you actually use? Well, while you absolutely cannot use probability or code quality to drop your safety class, you can use verified external risk controls. Saying, hey, we've got 95% test coverage, totally invalid argument for lowering a class. But if you can point to an independent hardware interlock, or maybe a physically separate safety device that actively stops the hazardous situation, now we're talking. Those are valid class reducers, provided they sit entirely outside the software system itself and are rigorously verified.
Section 4. Systems, items, and segregation. The architecture puzzle.
Now we're zooming in. We're going from the massive software system as a whole down to the individual little items inside it. This is where the architecture puzzle gets super interesting, and it's where your actual workload is decided. So here's a critical question that trips up a lot of teams. By default, every single software item inherits the overarching systems class, right? So if your system is Class C, every tiny piece of code defaults to Class C, carrying the maximum documentation rigor. So how on earth do we lower an item's class? It is a massive misconception in the industry that a minor, harmless-seeming feature just automatically requires less documentation. It doesn't work that way.
The one and only, heavily verified loophole to lower an item's class is segregation. Segregation means you have architectural separation so strong that a failure in one item literally cannot affect another item. It's a hard property of your architecture, not just a nice intention from your dev team, and you have to prove it. You have to go in and actively try to break that isolation, crash the lower class item, flood its memory, max out its CPU, and then prove with cold, hard evidence that the higher class item kept running safely.
What's really fascinating here is how quickly this exposes the flimsy excuses teams use to get out of work. Look at the spectrum of segregation. Totally separate hardware or completely separate devices, that is the strongest. Container or hypervisor isolation where they don't share writable memory, also strong. But then you get down to things like naming conventions or my absolute personal favorite, well, the developers know not to touch it. Guys, that is not segregation at all. If an auditor comes knocking and asks to see your segregation, handing them good intentions is just going to get you a major nonconformity.
Section 5. Tailoring the work by class. Doing the necessary.
So why do we care so deeply about getting these classes right? Because the safety class dictates exactly how much lifecycle rigor you are on the hook for. The crucial point here is understanding the line between justified tailoring and just hiding a nonconformity. Tailoring means you are adapting how an activity is performed so it fits your tech and your safety class. Like, maybe you use automated static analysis, combined with some targeted tests to hit your verification goals. You change the method, which is fine. But what you can never, ever do is just skip a required activity altogether because you're on a tight deadline or your devs are super experienced. A tight schedule is literally never an excuse for tailoring.
Section 6. The legacy software route. Facing reality.
Let's talk about facing reality with code that was written way before anyone worried about these strict rules. Maybe you acquire a startup, or you suddenly realize your existing product is actually classified as a medical device. What happens if that software is already out on the market, working just fine, but has absolutely zero compliant lifecycle history? Look, the temptation to just invent past design records and backdate them is strong, but let me be crystal clear, that is falsification of records. It's a massive regulatory offense. Luckily, IEC 62304 gives us an honest route instead.
Let's walk through how to build a legitimate, truthful compliance strategy here. Step 1, you must classify the software first because the class sets your target. Step 2, do a brutally honest gap analysis against what that specific class requires. Step 3, close the safety significant gaps. We're talking about writing down the risk analysis and actually verifying your architecture. And step 4, document a rock-solid rationale for continued use.
This whole route is based on one hard truth. You cannot go back in time and hold a design review that never happened. Now, you are permitted to use field experience, stuff like years of use, install base, complaint history, as evidence in your rationale. But hear me on this, field experience cannot magically replace the architecture you never bothered to write down, and it absolutely cannot substitute for a real, forward-looking risk analysis. Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today, from assuming absolute 100% failure to the harsh realities of segregation and legacy code. So, I want to leave you with a final provocative question. Take a hard look at your product right now. Could your current codebase survive a true safety audit, where 100% failure is assumed and probability is completely wiped off the table? It's a tough, unforgiving standard, but remember, it's built to ensure that when the software matters the absolute most, it fails safe. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.